Good evening and a warm welcome to Rushcliffe Borough Council's corporate overview scrutiny group meeting. I would like to remind everyone that the meeting is being live streamed on YouTube. Recording of the meeting will be available afterwards on the council's YouTube channel. In addition, other people may film, record, post on social media or blog from this meeting. The use of any such images or sound recordings is not under the council's control. May I remind councillors to please switch your microphone off when you're not speaking. Thank you. And officers that we have here with us tonight is Charlotte Cabanatac, Head of Corporate Services, Catherine Evans, Head of Growth and Property, Sarah Whitaker, Head of Finance, and Ed Palmer, Communications and Customer Services Manager. So right, for the first item on our agenda, as always, is apologies for absence.
We have apologies from Councillor Cumberlack, Councillor Plant and Councillor Way.
Thank you. Could I have a show of hands just to accept those, please? Thank you. Item 2, any declarations of interest? Do we have any at all? No? Brilliant. Item 3, minutes of the meeting held on the 25th November 2025, which I understand I was the only one present at that meeting. So unless anybody has viewed it on YouTube and read the minutes and kind of agree that they're an accurate representation of the meeting, I'll put a show of hands and I'll quite happy to then sign them. I've read the minutes and they are from my point of view. So thank you very much. Item 4 on tonight's agenda is Equality, Diversity, Inclusion Scheme update on Diversity Annual Report 2024 to 2025. You're going to be presenting. Over to you.
Good evening, everyone. So I've got just a few slides to run through, which just gives an overview of some of the information that was contained in the reports and appendices. So bear with me. That's it. Okay. So the this slide is just an overview of some of the data. So there was quite a lot of data contained in the appendices, and there was an overview provided in the report. So I don't intend to go through all of that. I'm assuming you've kind of all had a look at that. And largely, so this is a report that comes every year to this committee. So information around our residents and councillors hasn't changed since the last report, because it's kind of taken from the census, and obviously the councillors are the same as last year. There's been slight changes with our employees, but again, you know, that's not particularly significant in terms of numbers, but the sort of information's on the slide. I think if we just take a moment to reflect on the applicants' information. So this is people that have applied for jobs at the council over last year. So we received 488 applicants for jobs in 24-25 compared to 674 in 2023-24, but that's still up on previous years. And speaking to colleagues in HR, that the thought on that is it's due to the number of people looking for work in the UK at the moment, as well as we've advertised a few roles that received quite a large number of applications, so kind of individual roles that attracted a lot of interest. Clearly, as set out in the report, we're anticipating that LGR will have an impact on potentially resignations, with some staff choosing to leave local authorities for the private sector where they can. And that obviously due to uncertainty and concerns around job security, so that we might see that kind of changing over the next sort of couple of years. And then moving on to some of the areas covered in the report. So we asked BDO, our internal auditors, to carry out an EDI, Equality, Diversity, Inclusion Maturity Assessment. So this was an advisory piece of work assessing our current position against their Equality, Diversity, Inclusion matrix. So that assessed elements of the work that we do on this against things like tone from the top, governance, compliance and strategy, structure, policies, procedures, training and development, measurement, accountability and continuous improvement. And you can see on the slide some of the areas of best practice that they picked out from the work that we do at the moment, as well as some recommendations which we are following up on. So some of them, so the first one on there around updating the action plan to better identify responsible officers and timescale. So we've done that, and hopefully the action plan that was shared in the appendices with the report, you can see now we've got responsible officers, we've got clear milestones and actions, so that we can kind of better follow up on that, kind of more so than we have had in previous years. There's also things around considering designating a senior executive team member as EDI sponsor or champion. We've obviously got head of service with me being the lead on this, and we've also got Councillor Jonathan Wheeler, who's the cabinet champion of equality, diversity, inclusion. So that might be one where we think actually we've got enough in place already without needing to think about that. But they're all on there for you to have a look at and were contained in the report as well. So there's areas that we will be following up on based on that assessment that we've had carried out. And then just a bit of a reflection on some of the work that we've done over the last year. So the EDI scheme is on the internet, on the website, and we have what sits underneath that is the action plan that you can find in Appendix F. And we have a cross-organisational equality, diversity and inclusion steering group that's made up of officers from different teams across the council. So we meet quarterly and kind of review the action plan and get updates and anything else that we need to be focusing on or thinking about based on any new legislation that might have come out. So there isn't a dedicated officer within the council that is focusing on equality, diversity and inclusion. It's something that we kind of do across departments to make sure that we're trying to embed this as much as we can in kind of existing policies, strategies and plans. So in terms of some work that we've done over the last year, we've got a new equality impact assessment process that we have set out. So any new policy and strategy should have an equality impact assessment to review how that policy or strategy will impact on particular groups, and we've set up a new process so that these kind of 2 stages now, so there's kind of a light touch bit that might be sufficient for some areas of work, and then a more detailed assessment that will be carried out on other areas of work. So we've developed that process, and we've done some training for staff online, and we're intending to do some further training at Future Leadership Forum on that as well. The Borough Council's website is Sure Trust accredited. That was done in 2024, and Ed and the team aim for all digital communications to align with the public sector bodies website and mobile applications accessibility regulations. I'm glad Ed's sitting next to me, so if there's any questions on that, I'm sure Ed can answer those. We've got carer friendly accreditation in August 2024, so that's in recognition of our proactive approach and strong commitment to supporting unpaid carers within our organisation. So key actions within that include delivering carer awareness training to the senior leadership team, reviewing and updating policies to embed carer support across the organisation, and training for carer champions to encourage peer-to-peer support across the workforce for those that have got caring responsibilities outside of work. We've got the Rushcliffe Arena Light Up Plan, which is in place, so that helps raise awareness of national campaigns, so things around Holocaust Memorial Day, Pride Month, World Suicide Prevention Day and other things throughout the year. And then we coordinate a joint membership to the Hidden Disabilities Sunflower campaign for partners within the primary care network. So that's this recognised initiative offers a discreet way for individuals with non-visible disabilities to indicate that they may need additional support. So that's something that we do on behalf of the primary care network, ensuring people have got access to relevant training and resources as they need to. Some pictures for you, so a little bit more about what we've done. So we've adopted a new Rushcliffe Play strategy, which hopefully you will have all had a chance to have a look at. That's got a focus on accessibility and inclusion, as well as making space for girls. So this new strategy that Derek and his team have set up ensures that these groups, so particularly kind of girls, are at the heart of the design process as they're kind of rolling out new play, and that's there then to support parishes and others who might be installing new play equipment. Inclusive play improvements have been made at Rushcliffe Country Park, Greythorn Drive play area, Bridgeford Park play area, Bridgefield Team Park. So they're all open for use and have been since the 2nd of June across areas. As well as that, we've used some of the UK Share Prosperity funding that we've had to provide grants to some parish councils to enable them to provide some inclusive play equipment in parks. So East Bridgeford, Gampston and Radcliffe-on-Trent are a few of those that have benefited from some UK Share Prosperity Fund. We've recently completed some public realm improvements on Central Avenue to remove some pinch points to improve accessibility along Central Avenue, as well as kind of generally enhancing the appearance of the area with new benches and places for people to sit to encourage some dwell time. The Framework Knitters, which is one of the photos that you can see up there, received some grant funding from us to improve their outside space and kind of carry accessibility improvements throughout the museum. 2,000 people attended the 2nd Lunar New Year event on the 1st of February at Bingham Arena, so that event continues to grow and attract more and more interest. And then 55 local residents was supported by the Transform Your Future programme. So this is a programme that's been delivered by an organisation called Nottinghamshire Futures, and it's aimed to deliver kind of employment and skill support for those furthest from the labour market to get them back into work or into training. And we delivered some training courses for English for speakers of other languages. So we did that through Inspire Libraries. So that was supported 30 local people across 6 sessions. And then thinking kind of about this year ahead, so we need to do a refresh of the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion scheme. So it's been in place for 4 years now, so it's time to have a look at that and see if there's anything else that we need to add to that. So it is quite a short document deliberately. It's intended to kind of just give an overview of what we want our priorities and areas of focus to be, and then the action plan is really where the detail is. So it might be that the document itself doesn't need many changes, but that's something that we will be reviewing over this year. We intend to work with Nottinghamshire County Council to understand the work that they are doing on community cohesion networks. So we have tried to establish a community cohesion network in Rushcliffe with limited success so far. So I think it's just kind of trying to learn what others are doing and where we can perhaps work with other organisations if these things exist elsewhere. There's going to be a delivery of women and girls golf programme and cricket offer. We want to establish better links with some relevant groups. So kind of linked to the community cohesion network point really, but groups like Hong Kong Knots as one example, so we can make sure that we are engaging with groups like that as we develop policies and things. We want to further develop the Lunar New Year event to meet the growing demand. As I've mentioned, it's a growing event, so we want to be able to try and support that if we can now and in the future. We've got further play area enhancements planned in West Bridgeford, and we've recently closed this year's UK Share Prosperity Fund grant pot for community groups, and there's some projects coming out of that will further enhance play parks across the borough, supporting parish councils. We want to do some business support focused on accessibility, so particularly tourism businesses, so that could be high street businesses and others, but kind of an accessible tourism business support offer, and we're working with Visit Nottinghamshire around that. In terms of recruitment, our HR team are looking at benchmarking our application form against other local authorities to make sure it's kind of not stopping people applying for job opportunities across the council. We're going to develop some videos to demonstrate the range of jobs on offer working at the council, and we're involved in the national recruitment campaign alongside East Midlands councils to try and increase interest in jobs within the council and the kind of diversity of applications that we receive. That's it from me.
Thank you very much. Open it to councillors for any questions or comments. Yeah, Councillor Sinners.
Such a diverse range of activities you just brought out in the heading of the subject. How much of it is a legislative requirement, and how much of it is the gold standard of what we do under DEI? And is there any way that you could define how much we spend on DEI in the certain areas?
So, I mean, in the report, in the reasons for recommendation, we do set out that there's a equality duty. So there's a requirement on public authorities to consider how their policies or decisions affect people who are protected under the Quality Act. So there is a requirement for us to consider how we deliver everything for different groups and how that might impact them on different ways. So things like the equality impact assessment that I mentioned. In terms of finance, we don't track necessarily the work that we do. As I mentioned, we don't have a specific equality, diversity and inclusion officer that delivers this work. It's kind of, we're trying to incorporate it into everything that we do and embed it across the council as a kind of slight enhancement on some of the things that we do. So rather than significant extra cost, but clearly for some elements there are costs associated.
From it, would it be possible to define it in time, extra time, or rather than finance, that all these processes and systems take, like you have meetings of a number of heads of department, their time is X, which equals Y. I'm just trying to understand. A lot of authorities and a lot of public sectors go over and above what we need to do and spend over and above what we need to spend on various aspects, and it's fairly high in the political agenda at the moment. So I'm just trying to understand how much Rushcliffe spends on this particular topic. So I know because it goes into so many aspects. I get it that it's really difficult to define, but I'm just interested, if we were audited and somebody said, and we're not going to be audited on it, but if in 4 years' time we're audited on it, how much have we spent on DEI? And I just like a rough figure in time or resource, because you explained so many different things, and some of it, that comes under the banner. Oh, I didn't realise that came under the DEI banner, because I didn't realise that. So it would be nice for it to be understood what we're spending where and when.
So yes, I guess it would be for certain aspects. So where we're adding inclusive play equipment, for example, there's kind of an easy thing there. A lot of what we've done, particularly kind of outside of West Bridgford, has been via grants, so not kind of Rushcliffe money, and we could make an educated kind of guess on how much officer time is spent on all of this stuff. So there's a specific meeting once a quarter, which is, you know, maybe an hour or so of a group of officers, so you could put a time allocation to that. But then obviously there is time that some officers spend working on these things, but a lot of it is things that we're doing anyway. So it's just kind of.
So what you're saying, it probably costs more spending time trying to define how much it costs to.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
I'll leave it there, but I think you understand the flavour of what I'm trying to get across.
Thanks. It mentioned in the paperwork that the borough will continue to work with local businesses to try and ensure disability in workplace access for people with disabilities. I'm just wondering what kind of things we actually do and how visible that is to local businesses, because as someone who knows quite a few local businesses in my area, quite a few of them would like to employ more people with disabilities of kind, but don't know how to proceed and don't know what to do. So just wondering what advice we offer and what grants are available, or how we could direct people to that. Is there anything we do differently?
So there is the grants that we've got, some high street grants that are available at the moment, and one of the areas of focus of that is accessibility improvement, so enabling people to get into premises and things like that. So rather than employing staff, it's kind of more focused on that. And I think when we were thinking about the business support and the accessible tourism, it was that same kind of thing, advice for businesses about how they can better communicate what is available in their premises so that people can make an informed decision before they visit, was the idea. But we do have a business advisor who works for us 1 day a week, who is there to support businesses and point them in the direction of things like support for that kind of thing. We don't have a specific grant pot for employing people with disabilities, but there's a lot of work that has been done through the Careers and Enterprise Company and some work that the Combined Authority are doing around some of that. So, you know, we can provide links with that as well to provide support. So if there are businesses that you're working with that are interested, please do signpost them to us. We can point them in the right direction and have a chat with them.
Thank you for the report and presentation. Just a quick question. I was looking at the Appendix A yesterday and about the ethnic groups. And I was also reading about the UK Shared Prosperity Fund grant, which is used for the Lunar Festival event in Bingham, and it's very popular. But when I was reviewing the ethnic groups, the Asian, British, Chinese is 900 residents in Rushcliffe, as opposed to other groups, maybe Indian, which are 3,471, or Pakistani, which is 1,498. So when it comes to funding and organizing events, what benchmark or what criteria are we using to say that this funding would be allocated for an event for a particular group of people? Is there a particular tool that we are using? Because in terms of the demographic, the population of the other two groups in terms of ethnicity are significantly higher.
So no, there isn't a kind of benchmark or tool. I think the focus on the Lunar New Year events are open for anybody to attend. It's not necessarily a specific group, but clearly there is a kind of group that we have in mind for that. And I think the reason for that was because they're newer residents generally into the area, so it's kind of establishing a community for them and connections for them. And so I think any other events and things we would need to consider resources and as I say, what we're now trying to think about is beyond kind of this next lunar event, how do we make it sustainable? And if there are other groups who want to run events and things, and that's so the point about kind of community cohesion network and what others are doing, there are other things that we can tap into to support some of our activity and work with other organisations on what they're doing. So I think it would just be as there was an interest in something, we could respond to that.
So if the groups are interested, who would they be contacting?
I think they can start with me as a starting point, and then I can have a conversation with colleagues in the team.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've attended one of those lunar events previously at Bingham Marina, and were really well attended, and the networking for them, because as Catherine has said, there's a lot of new residents, and there's this kind of data from 4 years ago. I suspect that number has kind of increased significantly, even just in the area that I live in, from that time, of how it's changed. But just on that kind of subject, are we doing any other kind of thing with new groups like the Chinese that have come in and from Hong Kong to engage with them? Because for instance, even just at a town level, had it some impact of where they're not quite sure on how to access kind of council services, or questions they've got about what they want to do for like a building application or something like that, and what they need to do in this country as compared. Is it just somebody like Hong Kong Knots that they can go to? Likewise, any other group that might not be, or just in general kind of thing, but particularly have had very recently from the influx of the Hong Kong community.
Yeah, I think this is something that we've previously spoken to East Midlands councils about, because they were doing some work, so they had some funding. I think that they supported groups like Hong Kong Knots to deliver activity to help them engage with public sector organisations and support them with how to access services and support and things. So that's why I think we want to establish those links and those relationships a bit more, to think about how we could then better engage with some of those groups so that they understand what the council does.
And the only thing I was going to add to that, I know our members of our waste team in this year have circulated for example, recycling leaflets translated into Mandarin, and they've gone to local primary schools and other places where there is obviously a higher percentage of Hong Kong nationals and others who would benefit from it. It's listening to what a specific need, and that came in that there was a more knowledge needed around recycling. So, for example, that met that need. But I think, yeah, there's possibly a scope of trying to do something that is more well-rounded, of understanding the common items that anybody would need, particularly if you obviously come into the borough and English isn't your first language. So, yeah, I think it's the thread of work to do on that.
And I've just got one other question on where you said about with the women and girls in sport and the initiatives and all that, trying to assist with the facilities that we have as a borough. I know that there's been a lot more net bays being put in at West Park, for instance, and trying to build that as a cricket facility and that. But is there anything out that the boroughs do it to kind of help? Because certainly women and girls in football has exploded exponentially, and then you are seeing it in a lot of other sports, like even with rugby, cricket, for instance, that are coming in that are going to need kind of like the clubs are going to need that extra equipment and coaches as well. What is the kind of, has there been anything else that the council's been done to help clubs meet that demand?
So that's something I would need to take away and speak to our sports development officer about to find out. I know from the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, we have given grants to a couple of sports clubs for exactly that purpose, to help them deliver more, so that they can kind of support the women and girls programs that they want to do more of. But in terms of what else we're doing, I can find out and come back to you.
Any other questions from anybody? No. So just go to the recommendations that we've been asked to consider, endorse the information provided for the diversity annual report, and to review the action taken so far as part of the Equality, Diversity, Inclusion Scheme Action Plan, and make suggestions for future actions or areas of focus, which I think we've done. So I just need to show of hands just to say we've met those recommendations that we've been asked. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Catherine, for your presentation and answering our questions. Thank you very much. More than welcome to stay, as always, but you can go. Right, moving on to item 5, financial and performance management. So I think it's Sarah first, isn't it, usually on this one? So over to you.
Chair, I'm assuming that you've all read the report. It's quite long, so I'm not going to go through all of it again. So essentially, this is the final quarter's report for this financial year. So you'll have seen 3 quarterly reports already on this. So the key points to note on this report are: there's a revenue underspend of £2.4 million in the service delivery. These are shown on tables 1 on page 46, table 2 on 47 and 48, and also in Appendix A, which then gives a lot more detail as to where those variances have come from. So some of the big variances in there that you'll see are planning income and appeals have are adverse variances, with some housing support costs that have increased since last financial year that we weren't expecting. And the main variances that are favourable are in relation to investment income and some contractual savings in various areas. So we also have some additional variances relating to grant income, and this is quite a usual thing. We get announced during budget setting how many grants we're going to have, and then more come through during the year. So that's not unusual. And also some business rates, additional growth, which totals 2.962 million when you combine those with the service efficiencies. These have been either appropriated to reserves for future commitments or have been carried forward for things that the budget's already needed for, and they can be found in Appendix E. On paragraph 4.12 on page 49, you can see the movement in reserves during the year, and also shows the opening and closing balances for those. This is also covered in Appendix B on page 69. The most significant of these are creating a simpler recycling reserve, which are new council requirements for the later part of this year and going into next year. Some land for carbon offsetting, West Bridgford Town Centre, disabled facilities grants, and for local government reorganisation, which is likely to incur some significant costs going forward. The capital section starts at paragraph 4.16, and the headlines for that are a 5.109 million underspend, of which the majority of which is carried forward for projects that are already committed. So these are things that have just sort of been rephased out of this financial year into next. And special expenses on paragraph 4.17 shows an overspend of around £50,000, mostly as a result of lost income. And as a final point, our accounts, it's referred to in this report, but our accounts were actually published on the 11th of June. So if you fancy any more reading, you can find them on our website. And I'll hand over to Ed and then take any questions afterwards.
Thank you, Chair, Councillors. Appendix G is what we're focusing on here. Generally, the theme is that we still experience high levels of demand. Performance is stable or above target in many places. That said, we've got 8 indicators here not reaching target in this quarter. The percentage of household waste is the first one. We know councils are seeing reductions in recycling rates, so it's very welcome the simple recycling changes set to be introduced from late this year will help with that, not least glass collections at the curbside in separate bins, and that will really help then looking going forward, and probably from next March it'll be very interesting to see how those recycling rates are affected. The key here as well is that we hope that by 2027, and once the food waste collection service is introduced, we could be hopefully looking at a 60% recycling rate. So that's what we're hoping to aim towards. And that said, the context here is, of course, our figures are still very positive when compared with the rest of the county. Moving on to the recycling contamination rate itself, as supplied by Veolia, works ongoing to improve the figures of these, not least through some communications. Most recently, we unfortunately had batteries and single-use vapes placed in a bin that caused a small fire in the back of a waste vehicle, for example. So it's really important that we continue the communication campaign to ensure that people are placing the right items in the right bin, or where they need to place those items such as batteries. And the team at the depot are doing a great job continuing to engage on communal bin stalls, educating repeat offenders where bins are regularly contaminated. But again, simple recycling is going to help a lot with this. Moving on to the percentage of usage of community facilities, we've not achieved the target of 50% on this occasion, but significant progress is being made. There's been a new facilities manager and supervisor being recruited with respective experience that should be really, really helpful to us. Here in this chamber, we've got a new AV system been procured and installed that will really help with external bookings. And over at the St Julian Calm Pavilion at West Park in West Bridgford, redevelopment's underway that again will attract new customers in due course. The promotion of the venues as well will continue on social media to try and ensure that we're reaching out to new demographics and audiences who might be interested in making future bookings. Just that associated income as well with that, we've got our the target's not been achieved this time around, but the significant income of parks and playing fields has kept the facilities team very busy. So it just showed that there is a market that is changing there, and maybe there's more work to be done around that in identifying which facilities are most popular and why. Switching over then to the total car parking income that you might see, the 4-week delay on the Bingham car parking changes, we know that made some difference. There was resurfacing at Nursery Road, Bridgford Road car parks in West Bridgford in this quarter. That had an effect, but I must say that this is an indicator that hasn't been on a list of missing target for many, many years. So yeah, I think this is an anomaly in this case. Moving on to Rushcliffe Oaks, 617 cremations were carried out at Oaks at 24-25. Industry colleagues indicated that there were lower death rates. It was quieter than usual, going back to sort of pre-pandemic levels. That's obviously very much a plus on the health side of things, but obviously in terms of looking at the wider plan for what Oaks' business planning, it needs to be adjusted according to that. But they are doing lots of things with the wider community, with different stakeholders. Most recently, they had an open day on Saturday, another one. Great example of the team reaching out in all sorts of different ways to understand that the facility isn't just a crematorium. It is a base that's focused in many other ways, not least with its environmental credentials. The team have been shortlisted for an APSC award, Innovation Award for Sustainable Memorialisation. So lots and lots going on over at Oaks that should hopefully increase things. And despite that lower death rate that we talked about, there has actually been 36% growth in terms of the of what Oaks have dealt with compared with 23-24. So again, the team there have done a fabulous job, I think, in terms of reaching out to the community and, more importantly, listening, I think, from families, funeral directors and others about where the service and what could be done to help make that place more welcoming and as encouraging as it can be. The final one is just percentage of councillors completing e-learning. I know this was something that we discussed briefly last time. What's really helped though is that the figure has improved over the last 12 months. Introduction of a single sign-on and of course the month email seems to be having some desired effects in places. And I think the member development group is going to discuss this again soon. I don't know if there's any way you want to start the discussion, Chair.
Just where you mentioned on the financial around the adverse weather at the beginning of 2024, has anything kind of impacted from the kind of opposite weather that we've experienced at the beginning of this year, where potentially more waters had to be used for sporting and grounds facilities and that? I don't know if there's an overlap of when it happened or if it goes into this financial year or if it kind of was just into March.
I know the adverse weather in March last year was to do with the flooding.
Yeah.
So that's obviously gone into the clubhouse and surrounding areas. So there's been some work going on for that, but I'm not sure you're referring to in terms of that opposite to that.
It's been quite dry at the beginning of this year. So certainly I've known of some clubs have had to use a lot more water in order to then water pitches and that kind of thing in order for seeding and stuff. So I didn't know if there's kind of been noticed, but then that might be this financial year, not the last, because I'm not quite sure on where that would kind of show, and particularly with the water usage. I've just known that there's been quite an increase.
I think anecdotally, we'll try and get some more information on that specifically, but I know, for example, over at Gresham, which is one of the most popular facilities, the reason the second 4G pitch was installed was because on the opposite end of the scale, grass pitches couldn't be used because they were flooded more. So there's almost that sway towards there isn't the upkeep required with things like also for the extremities of what you get weather-wise. That's where there's all the weather pitches really come into their own. So, but no, I've not heard anything anecdotally, but we'll check on that one.
Sorry, first of all, I would like to talk about Rushcliffe Oaks a little bit, because I was unfortunate but fortunate enough to attend a ceremony there, and the facilities are really fantastic, and the way it was run by the staff there was absolutely wonderful. So I'd like to commend them for that. It was fantastic, and I think I've had lots of favourable feedback from other people who've attended things there. So yeah, I'd like to just have that noted if you can. But the other quick thing was, I think it's page 56. I was trying to find it. It just mentions in passing about locked 106 money. I'm finding it now, stalled section 106 money from sites. I'm just wondering, it's probably not the time or place now, I don't know, but just to find out how many sites have stalled on that and how significant that is and what we're doing to unlock those sites. Because I know in Runnington particularly, we've got one site in particular that's locked at the moment with the money coming out of there. I'm just wondering, is this happening more widely across the borough and is it really quite impactful financially? But I don't know if you can answer that now.
There we go. Certainly, I know that historically we've got section 106 money, as we know for lots of historical reasons, is where it's at. There hasn't been anything that, as far as I'm aware, there isn't a particular increase, but there is continually that blockage in places because of factors, obviously, of developers and otherwise, and other factors. So I haven't got anything again that is pointing towards to say there's been an increase in that. But I'll have a look for you. I'll get some statistics back for you. I know we last year I looked at this. If you know, Sarah. Yeah.
So yeah, if this because this section, I was just looking for the section in the report, is referring to the strategic housing, which we know from going through reports at both this group and at Cabinet that it's been an issue for a while, and a lot of that is because the housing providers have access to other grants before they come to us for this, which is why a lot of the time it's not spent. So we have got pots of money that we can share with them and release to them, but I know the team are ongoing looking at other options all of the time, but it's just making sure those options are feasible before we go ahead with them. So some progress has been made recently, but hopefully that will start to come through in this financial year, and the spend should go up.
Just wanted to add as well, is there any more info on getting help with the national insurance bill? I noticed that in the report there was something around where we weren't getting kind of all of it. Is there any more news on that, or when we could expect to hear something to help with that?
It has been confirmed the amount of grant that we're getting towards that, and it's just under half of what we anticipate the additional cost to be. So we're not expecting them to give us any further grants towards. What is unknown at this stage is whether that grant is going to continue, or whether at some point in the future it'll just be rolled into some other funding that the council gets as a whole, rather than it being towards that.
And just where the income from community buildings is that, and I know it's been discussed at community scrutiny and looked at in depth, and when you're looking at community buildings and the parks and the pitches and everything, we're kind of generally up if you had both of them together. Is there any crossover still between the two of them, where even does it get listed as a booking of a pitch or park, but the building's then still used? Is there any crossover like that, for instance?
Depending on which facility you're looking at, I know you can make the booking of either just the pitch plus the building facilities, or just the pitch itself. But in terms of crossover, can you just define that a little bit more? Of
just, for instance, like West Park, if you're looking at booking the pavilion for something, but then you're using pitch or net bays or something else at that facility, putting a tournament on or something, does that go down as the open space or the pavilion being booked?
my understanding, it would be separate. So you almost got to, yes, so it would be, you can have events going alongside each other. It wouldn't be just one booking. So yeah, that's my understanding. Again, I will double check that with you.
Have any more questions anyway? No. Okay, just as always, go to the recommendations for us. So it is recommended that corporate overview scrutinises the 2024-25 revenue position and efficiencies identified in Table 1, the variances in Table 2 and Appendix A, the changes to the earmark reserves as set out at Appendix B, along with the carrying forwards and approximations in reserves in Appendix E, the capital carry forwards outlined in Appendix C and summarised in Appendix F, the update of the special expenses outturn in paragraph 4.17 and in Appendix D, and performance expectations detailed in paragraphs 4.22 to 4.427 to judge whether further scrutiny is required. Can I have a show of hands that we've met that and done that, please? Thank you very much, councillors. Thank you very much to you both for the presentation and answering our questions. Right, on to the next item is item 6, review of the strategic tasks.
Very much, Chair. So way back when, about 18 months ago, before we approved the new corporate strategy in December 2023, we brought forward a written document that was basically saying this is what we have done in terms of our impact in achieving the strategic tasks that were in the last corporate strategy. And it was part of our review of how well have we done, where have we still got room to move, what can we roll forward, what can we sign off. And members of this group liked that document a lot. They wanted to have a more regular update on what we had been doing in more detail about the strategic tasks than what you've just had in Ed's report. And this is the first of those documents. So what we have done is we've looked at the 12 tasks that are in the current corporate strategy and tried to summarise all the progress that's been made over the last 18 months since the corporate strategy was adopted. And our intention would be then to repeat that exercise each year so that you get an annual update moving through the life of the corporate strategy. So I'm not intending to go through all of those in any detail. You've had a look through it. I think it provides a very good overview of the activity that officers have been doing across the borough and hopefully contains some interesting information for you. But I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any, if I can, that is.
There's a question about in the corporate strategy about grants being available to people who live in older properties for insulation, solar panels, etc. And I just wanted to know where are we with that at this point? How many properties do we think we have in the borough? And how are we ensuring that that message is reaching the residents?
Very specific questions, which I'm not in a position to answer, but I'll make sure I get you some answers for those.
I don't have any questions, but found it a really useful report that sets out. And I remember when we spoke about it, so I think there's a kind of a starting point moving forward. And then when we've got some of the other councillors who have been on this committee previously, and when we've had that discussion and to review it, I think, yeah, in the future years, it's going to be a really good document to use and look back on and detail what we've done around the corporate strategy. So yeah, I haven't got any questions with specifically on it, but just wanted to make that comment on the actual document. So thank you very much.
Yeah, just to clarify, so in the coming future times we go through this, it will be a very similar document, just with key changes and differences highlighted. Do you think we'll look like that, so we can wondering how will you summarise the changes for us that we've done and seen?
I think it will be a similar document in terms of the format and how it looks, but essentially the information will get updated each year. So rather than just adding an extra paragraph on, I will take all the text out and give you a complete update for that year, building on what we have each year, and obviously summarising things that have been completed. At the end, we've said 2 tasks have been completed. We're going to roll those off the programme and into operational monitoring, and we've suggested that we bring forward a task on the old LGR, just so that we can start focusing on that a bit more.
In terms of, because I was not there previously, sorry if this question might have been asked before, but in terms of the current corporate strategy, are there any areas where we feel that we're not achieving the progress that we are meant to? There's a drift and delay and more needs to be done. If so, what are those areas, and what's the council doing, the officers doing to kind of ensure that we deliver as per the direction set by the corporate strategy?
I think from our point of view, from an officer's point of view, things are progressing the way we expect them to. These are strategic tasks. Sometimes they are very difficult to move forward with any kind of pace. We're only 18 months into the delivery of the corporate strategy. I think what I can safely say is everything has started. We are working on everything. 2 tasks have been completed and we can move those aside. The areas where we anticipate there being slower progress are usually the ones where our role is about influencing the progress of something going forward rather than it being in our control. And our internal working documents actually do make that distinction between where we can influence and where we can control. Things are slower when there's only so much you can do to push them forward. But I don't think I have any particular concerns. I think next time we report this in 12 months' time, we'll be halfway through. And I think it might be a bit clearer then to see where we have progress, because you'll have this document to compare it against. Whereas at the moment, I know that you are new to the committee, but this is a new document. We've not done this In fact, we have done this before, but it was about 20 years ago, under very different circumstances. We've resurrected the piece of work that I came to the council to do all that time ago. So we used to do this, we didn't do it, now we do it through choice, and hopefully it will prove a useful exercise moving forward.
There's no more questions. Then I'll just go to the. So as there's no more question, I'll just go to the recommendations. Just to review the progress report against each strategic action set in 2024-2027 corporate strategy contained within Appendix 1 and highlight any potential areas for scrutiny during the coming year. So can I have a show of hands that we've done that? Thank you very much. Right, next item on tonight's agenda is feedback from Scrutiny Group Chairman. As we don't have anyone from Growth and Development Scrutiny Group, we have got a brief report from Councillor Way, where just saying from the last Growth and Development Scrutiny meeting was held on the 26th of March, and the main agenda item was the management of open spaces on new developments. A good practice guide intended to encourage managing agents, management companies and developers to provide a consistent and fair service to homeowners was presented to the group and discussed in detail. It was resolved that the Growth and Development Scrutiny Group endorsed the good practice guide for the management of open spaces and forwards it onto the Cabinet for consideration with the observations, suggestions for rewording, changes and alterations. Requested that the leader continues to lobby government to regulate the governance of management companies to ensure transparency and to remove charges unrelated to the management of open spaces, and finally to examine the deployment of the document and continue to investigate any measurable outcomes, and requested a second roundtable meeting at an appropriate time in the future and report of any findings back to Growth and Development Scrutiny Group. And a revised guide has been circulated to the group and comments received up until the 13th of June. The guide will go to Cabinet in July and will be in the public domain when the agenda is published on the 30th of June. So that's the brief update that we've got from Growth and Development. I do acknowledge that two councillors tonight have recently just gone into their positions. Have you had any meeting as yet? No, so you haven't have a report. And have you got anything, Councillor Pratt? I know you've been on community before, and
I've just been this year as a chair for the communities group. We've not had a meeting yet, so there is nothing to update from this year as such.
And I didn't have anything from being the previous chair from when I chaired the last meeting, so there's nothing on the feedback from there. So hopefully once you've all had an experienced your first meetings, then come back and tell how you found it and what kind of areas and areas to look at and improve and of the meetings. Certainly when you have outdoor speakers and presentations. All right, so next item is feedback from lead officers.
Thank you, Chair. Just one bit of feedback from me. Councillors will remember that the corporate peer challenge that we did a while ago now, over a year ago, recommended, well, didn't really recommend because it wasn't a proper recommendation, but suggested gently in their narrative that we might want to have a look at our scrutiny procedures and how they've done. And that was on the basis of some we did have a problem with the TVs turning off the other day. Today it's just like never mind. That we would have a bit of a look at our scrutiny process and how we do that. I have been working behind the scenes with our management team to scope out what that might be. And when we do that, I'm asking for some assistance. And I will put something in councillors' connections because I'm aware that this is a very small group this evening. So what we're looking for is for councillors to go online, have a look at other councils' scrutiny and perhaps send me some links to what you think good scrutiny looks like. So it's about getting some examples that we can share to say, actually, this is good scrutiny for these reasons, and try and identify what makes that scrutiny good. And then we can undertake an exercise about, so how are we different from that? How can we improve? Where can we learn from other people? Very much.
Last item is consideration of the scrutiny group work programmes. So this is where we look at any of the scrutiny requests that are come in, submitted before the deadline for this meeting. And I think we've got two that we've got in front of us this evening. The first one is from Councillor Tina Cumberlack and it's in relation to Rushcliffe flood risk update. You'll be able to see on the request outlined as what I'd like to explore, and the reasons for what I think it should be scrutinised. So I think with that one, it's for discussion in order to take it onto the programme, and then potentially which meeting it would fit under, which I think is going to be community, wouldn't it? So looking at you, Councillor Perec, any comments on this, or are we happy to accept the request to go to the scrutiny group?
I'm happy to accept the request.
Thank you.
Just add that we'll schedule it in for October, which gives officers time to work with it, and we've already asked provisionally the county council if they will attend to answer any of your questions.
Thank you. And the second item is from Catherine Evans, around the East Midlands Freeport, and this one would be to growth and development scrutiny group. So as we haven't got any representation from that scrutiny group, are we happy to put it onto their agenda and their programme, and accept it? Thank you very much. So looking at the work programmes with corporate overview group, it's all there, it's all the regular items, and then the rolling items, like we've had some of those tonight, for instance, the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Scheme. So the next one would be the 2nd of September, and that would have health and safety annual report. Governance, there's nothing to add, and again, they're kind of the standing items that is discussed on that scrutiny group. Growth and development, we've now put the East Midlands Freeport onto it. So what's the feeling for which?
We've actually penciled it in for July, which
Right.
means you have something for your next meeting, and we've secured provisionally on the basis of acceptance this evening the presence of Dan Cooper, who's their Senior Comms and Engagement Manager.
So it's just July, adding that item onto that agenda, and then with Community Scrutiny Group, 24th of July, performance of Metropolitan Thames Valley Housing, and then now in October, around the Rushcliffe flood risk update. So as you can see, I kind of put requests to any councillors and officers that if there's anything that they feel they would like to be scrutinised, is to submit a request, because as you can see, for growth and development, especially in communities, future meetings, there isn't anything on them. So otherwise, if we don't have anything for those to scrutinise, then it might have to be cancelled due to lack of business for those meetings. So I would encourage anybody to submit requests on anything, and to work with officers if they think that there's some as well, in order to submit those requests, and to get them in front of the groups. So just going on that, I think all we've got with the recommendations is just to accept those. Just get the actual wording. It's just to, so it's recommended that we just consider any additional items from the current Cabinet for Clients corporate strategy, medium-term financial strategy, capital investment strategy and transformation and efficiency programme, determine any additional topics to be included in a scrutiny group work programme for 2025-26 for each of the scrutiny groups as presented on newly submitted scrutiny requests, and review the current work programme for each of the scrutiny groups. So as outlined of what we've put onto the meetings, are we happy to accept those, please? Thank you very much. And that's everything that I've got on the agenda for tonight, and I close the meeting at 20:00.